RL102 Basic Russian Grammar Part 1
Основы грамматики русского языка, часть 1.
with Victor D. Huliganov. Copyright www.huliganov.com 2007. Good evening. It is me, Victor Dmitryevich Huliganov, coming to you with what is now 10th lesson in the series RL102 Basic Russian Grammar Part 1. Now, this lesson will be a very important milestone in your learning of Russian, because we are getting on to dative case of personal pronouns. In fact, dative case is so important in Russian that we even looked at it in the first course, RL101, but we didn't call it the dative case at that time. But you may remember the following expressions: мне надо, мне нужно, мне необходимо, мне нельзя. You probably remember these expressions from the 101 course, meaning different degrees of necessity. Мне надо means I have to, it's necessary. Мне нужно is I need to, and мне необходимо is it's essential for me, absolutely essential to go. Мне нельзя means it's not possible, I'm not allowed to do it. On the case of надо, нужно and необходимо, one thing that you can always do is check out what words which are very similar in meaning, in order to make your Russian more natural, is to check out the frequency. Use a book like this, Russian Learner's Dictionary, available on Amazon.com, 10,000 words in frequency order. If you look in this book, you will see that about position number 79, if I remember rightly, is надо, about 165 or something like this is нужно, and somewhere quite a lot down the line, 600, 900 or something, is необходимо. So it's clear from this that most commonly Russians will use the term надо, then second most commonly нужно, and third most commonly, quite a lot less commonly, about 10 times less commonly than they're using надо, they will use необходимо. Sometimes they even say вам необходимо надо делать что-нибудь, something. You need to listen out for these things. And so using the frequency dictionaries enables you not to use very commonly in your Russian words which are less common, and also and vice versa, making your Russian sound more natural. I'm also one of the reasons why I've purchased a dictionary is to make sure that I give to the learners in this course words which are close to the more common words, and also as a kind of checklist, so that as the course goes by I don't overlook relatively common words. So I'm using this book by Nicholas Brown as a bit of a checklist, but I do recommend you to buy your own copy. So today we are going to look at this dative case for the first time in its own right, because so far we did nominative case, where we have я знаю means I know, and я is the subject of the sentence. Я знаю тебя, ты знаешь меня. I know you, you know me. The subject knows the object in a direct object relationship. Okay, and that is the accusative. We also learned that as far as personal pronouns are concerned, the accusative and the genitive are the same, but that something like у меня, у тебя is a pure genitive preposition. It is definitely governing the genitive. And now we come on to the dative. The dative means from the idea of giving. In Russian it's called дательный падеж. In the same way as the genitive case is called родительный падеж. In Russian it means giving birth to something else. Okay, so that something comes of something else, the idea of coming of something or being made from something. The idea of the dative case is you are giving something to somebody. So it is given to you. And Russian is full of this idea. Russian is full of very impersonal constructions, which take the pronoun or the noun, which in other languages might be the subject, they put it into the dative case. Now, it may well be that some people already know this kind of construction from other languages. For example, in French, if you want to say I need to do something, you don't say j'ai besoin, you say I have need, j'ai besoin. Okay, and you have a lot of constructions in French and in Spanish and Italian where you have something, okay, which you would normally in English be. For example, in English you will say I am cold, whereas in French if you say I am cold, je suis froid, it means you are a cold-natured person. Okay, maybe you are a little bit frigid in the bed or something, which in the French would not really like this, because they are a passionate race, apparently. And so you say, if you want to say I'm cold, in this I'm experiencing cold, but I'm not cold forever. It's not, this coldness didn't get into my soul and turn me into a bad lover. It is simply that my body is a little bit cold right now. You say j'ai froid. And it's in Spanish the same. Tengo frío. You don't say yo soy frío. You don't say I am cold. Yes. You don't even say estoy frío. You say tengo frío. I have cold. Okay. In German, it's more similar in the direction of Russian. You don't say ich bin kalt. If a German say ich bin kalt, it's the idea that again that he is a cold person, naturally cold person. Whereas if you want to say that you feel cold, you would say mir ist kalt. Whereas in the case of Russian, if you say я холодный, it sounds like you're saying я холодный человек. I'm a cold-hearted bastard. I'm going to put a knife in you, or probably bullet, or maybe a little bit of polonium in your coffee. Whereas if you say yes, I keep it up to date, don't I? It's not like those courses which were done in the 1980s. They had the spiked umbrellas in those days. Okay, so basically, if you want to say I feel the cold, you say мне холодно. It is cold to me. And if you want to put it into the past, you can say мне было холодно. And if you want to put it into the future, I will be cold, you can say мне будет холодно, because it's simply an impersonal third-person construction. It was cold to me, it's going to be cold to me, it is cold to me. And so what I want to do right now is go through all of the personal pronouns and say what the dative case is for them. And then after this, in the next lesson on this subject, because it's too much for one lesson, I'm going to give you a lot of different examples of things which can be done with the dative case over and above the few that you know so far. Надо, нужно, нельзя. And it is something which will take you a long way in Russian. Quite a lot of sentences in Russian that you can make where two people are talking to one another and both of them end up in the dative and you don't have anybody being the subject. I give you an example of this. Мне делать тебе завтрак или тебе делать мне завтрак? Yes? Is it to you to make to me the breakfast, or is it to me to make to you the breakfast? It basically is, should I or was I supposed to make you, or am I supposed to make you breakfast, or are you supposed to make me breakfast? Okay? And so because of the way this works, is impersonal constructions, that sentence actually doesn't have a subject. It is only datives for the personal pronouns, and yet it's perfectly understandable to the Russians. The Russian is full of, well, in English you call them actually weasel expressions, where it's not clear who's taking responsibility for something. Yes, because everybody in the room ends up in the dative case, and so you can get a lot of mileage from the dative case. And these expressions that you will use with dative, like I say, a lot of them next lesson. Now we're going to go through the paradigm of what personal pronouns look like in the dative case. We already know mnie from ja, and from ty we have tibie. If you know Latin, this won't seem very surprising to you, because you may know in Latin is tibi, and it goes to show how many deep structures are common through Proto-Indo-European languages that are still inflected. It's not that Russian came from Latin or Latin from Russian, it's just that in the common ancestor between Russian and Latin, they most probably have the word for ty or tu would have had this b appearing in the dative form. Now, the same for the reflexive. Себе, to oneself. And if we come to the third person pronouns proper, we have on goes to ему. Please note also that кто goes to кому. If you want to say who needs it, you wouldn't say кто это нужен имеет or something like that. You would say кому это нужно. Who needs it? Кому это нужно? Okay, so even the кто changes to кому. Кого ты знаешь from the genitive, who do you know? Кому ты даешь? Who are you giving it to? Okay? So, and from on, ему. Okay? And we already learned before по-нашему, по-вашему, when we were talking about planting cabbages. So you can see this ему ending is a dative, and therefore you'll be correct in stating that the preposition po governs also the dative case, as does a number of other prepositions we will look at in due course. So, она goes to ей. Ей надо, ей холодно. Оно, if you have it, also would change to ему. Это would become этому, and in the plural, мы becomes нам. Нам нужно, нам надо, нам нельзя. Вы goes to вам, and они, regardless of what the mix of men and women are in it or how many people there are, goes to им. Okay, so here we have the whole paradigm, and I want you to try to learn it, because next time we're going to increase the number of structures which use these forms of the pronouns, and we're going to learn how to say quite a lot of interesting things using these forms in the next lesson, lesson 11. So please to learn them, and in a minute I'm giving you a song. Now here is the song. This song is called Уральская рябинушка, meaning the rowan tree of the Urals. The words is by M. Pilipenko, and the music is by E. Radygina. It is famous, this song, in many languages. It has also been translated into Polish as Jarzębina, but basically whatever it is sung, it is basically intended to be sung by a woman, but obviously I can't just wake my wife up to sing it for you when she's asleep, so I will sing it for you myself. It is about a woman, a young unmarried woman, who doesn't know which to marry. She got on one side she got someone who is working on the lace, and another who is working on a blacksmith anvil, and both of them want to marry her, and she don't know. She say both these men is very nice men's. I could be happy with the one or with the other, but if I don't look out, I'm going to end up neither with and get branded Trollop, not like Anthony Trollop, but Trollop who goes with too many at once, which you can do nowadays, but you couldn't do before. So, basically, she have to make her mind up, like Bucks Fizz in Eurovision Song Contest. But, unlike Bucks Fizz, who help to make their minds up by ripping off their clothings, she don't do this because she modest woman in Russia in the older period before modern times, and so she have to take a folk remedy to the situation. She go to the rowan tree and she ask, like Pocahontas with the willow trees, she say to the rowan tree, or of course Adrian Mole's Finance's mother, in the latest Adrian Mole and Weapons of Mass Destruction also say that she's going to ask a willow tree, whether she should get a divorce or not. But basically this old tradition of asking the trees questions is reflected in the song, because this girl, she decided that she's going to go and ask the tree for advice. Now, I like trees, but I don't suggest that you go and ask the trees for advice. Okay, it is only a poetical device that you go into the nature and you saying to the nature, please help me to make my mind up. It is purely a poetic conceit, if you like. It is not really done in seriousness by people. Don't go to trees or other plants and ask them who to marry. If you don't know who to marry, don't get married. But that's not what they did in the old days. So here's the song Uralskie rybinuszka, Ural rowan tree.
Ветер тихой песнею над рекой плывет, дальними зорницами светится завод. Где-то поезд катится точками огня, где-то под рябинушкой парни ждут меня. Ой, рябина кудрявая, белые цветы. Ой, рябина, рябинушка, что взгрустнула ты. Ой, рябина рядравая, белые цветы. Ой, рябина, рябинушка, что сгрустнула ты. Лишь кутки певучие смолкнут над водой. Я иду к рябинушке тропкою крутой, треплет под кудрявою ветер без конца. Справа кудри токаря, слева кузнеца. Ой, рябина, рябинушка, оба хороши. Ой, рябина, рябинушка, сердцу подскажи. Ой, рябина, рябинушка, оба хороши. Ой, рябина, рябинушка, сердцу подскажи.